You're listening to the My Simplified Life podcast, and this is episode number 295. Welcome to the My Simplified Life podcast, a place where you will learn that your past and even your present don't define your future. Regardless of what stage of life you're in, I want you to feel inspired and encouraged to pursue your dreams, simplify your life, and start taking action. I'm your host, Michelle Glogovac, author of How to Get On Podcasts, the podcast matchmaker, and CEO and founder of the MLG Collective. I'm excited to share the stories and life lessons of changemakers and authors with you while taking you on my own journey. This is My Simplified Life. Hey friends, welcome back to another episode. I'm your host, Michelle Glogovac, and today we're talking about kids, raising organized kids. And it's not simply about putting your clothes away that we're talking about. I have Dr. Damon Korb, who is the author of Raising an Organized Child, on to discuss his book and how we can help our children become these organized adults. And it's all about putting in practice routines and things to help them grow into organized people, organized in their thoughts, organized in the way that they construct their lives, they do their homework, all of these things. It's very insightful, and I know that you are going to enjoy it. Hello, Dr. Korb.
Hi, how are you?
I'm so good. I'm so excited to talk to you. And I think we should preface it to let everyone know that your dad is my dentist, but that's not how we connected.
No, that's a weird coincidence. But you do have a nice smile.
Well, thank you. I go every 6 months for my cleaning. So can you introduce yourself to everyone, please?
Sure. I'm Damon Korb. I'm a developmental and behavioral pediatrician. I direct and have founded the Center for Developing Minds, and I'm the author of the book Raising an Organized Child.
I want to talk about an organized child because if you ask my husband, we have an 8-year-old and a 9-year-old, and the 8-year-old, she does not feel that cleaning up is part of life. She likes to play and then move on to the next aspect. And what kind of an organized child are we talking about? Because she just doesn't like to be busied with that. What is an organized child?
Well, so when I talk about organized child, I'm not just talking about finding 2 socks that match or cleaning up your backpack or your bedroom. What I'm talking about is a way of thinking. I'm talking about the neurodevelopmental processes that underlie the ability to show insight, to grasp the big picture, to solve problems, those skills that they're going to need as they launch into adulthood.
And so what does, how do we, help with all of it. Yeah. I would help with all of it. And I think that in talking about that, regardless of which way we look at what organized means, I think adults need it too. So how does that work? Because what happens when you have a disorganized adult and now you're trying to raise an organized child? How do we organize the parent first?
Well, that's the question I get anytime I speak anywhere. And the answer is you play to your strengths. There's different types of organizational ability. Some people are spatially organized. Some people are temporally or sequentially time organized. Some people set up all kinds of systems to compensate for their organizational skills. So you play to your strengths, but also it's important to show your child that even if you're not good at something, that it's important and I'm working on getting better at it. You're modeling that behavior and emphasizing that organization is a big deal in life.
And I believe, is it 5 steps to an organized child?
5
is that
steps,
what the book has?
So the way the book is organized is I talk about these 5 steps, and these 5 steps apply to infants, to toddlers, to preschool age, school aged, all the way through high school. It's the same 5 steps that we're teaching kids. The lessons change depending on the child's ability and the child's age, but the same lessons exist. And that's, you have to be consistent as parents. You have to introduce order. You have to give everything a place. You have practice problem solving and forward thinking. And those are the 5 things that if you can do that, then you'll have no trouble remembering to put on deodorant and brushing your teeth as you get older.
We have a checklist actually. And I implemented that before kindergarten started of these are the things you have to do before as you get out of bed and before you start your day. And it is, you take your vitamin, brush your teeth, brush your hair, get dressed, make your bed, because I know that we thrive on consistency. That's me personally, my husband, and I've seen it in our children too. My son is a complete creature of habit. 6
Hmm.
a.m. on the dot, he is up. This is what he wants for breakfast. It's just what we do. And anytime there's, just a change, it's like, oh, wait a second, that doesn't work. And I learned that with my stepkids when they were younger, and we had them every other weekend, every Wednesday. I would meal plan in advance and we would have the menu written down. And my stepson would be like, oh, thank goodness, you know what we're having. I can prepare for it. And it was just simply a meal. But that's when I recognized 20 years ago, oh, yeah, we have to implement structure and routine and let them know this is what they're going to have.
Right. And I mean, that's a scientific thing. Our brains train to structure and routine. If you think about just sleep, if you sleep at regular times, you release getting sleepy hormones at bedtime, and you release wake up hormones at morning time. But if you're erratic with your sleep schedule, your brain doesn't work on your behalf, and you get tired in the middle of the day. And our brains like patterns and routines.
So, at what point, obviously, as a baby is born, you would like to implement these routines? And we know that babies thrive on structure, and this is, when nap time is and whatnot. But when can you start? And is it too late to start if you skip all of those years?
It's never too late to start, but with anything, the later you start, the harder the training process is. If you wait till your child's 6 to sleep train them, it's going to be harder than if you do it when they're 1. But you start in infancy. So we have studies from kids, that are raised in orphanages, and they sleep 3 kids in a bed, and the only time they're picked up is for their feedings and their diaper changes 3 or 4 times a day. And those kids have cortisol levels that go through the roof. That's your stress hormone. And when your stress hormone chronically is high, it actually is toxic to your brain. It damages your frontal lobe, which is the part of your brain that's so important for planning and organization and impulse control and all these things that teenagers do that stress us out. It damages that part of the brain, and so just at the very beginning, being consistent about when your baby cries and is hungry, you feed it. When your baby cries and is dirty, you change your baby. When your baby is tired, you put them to sleep. Having those routines is soothing and protective to your child's brain. We also know that by the time a child is just a few months old, they've learned cause and effect. They learn that if they push a button or touch something, it's going to make a noise. So they're learning in their first few months just a very basic sequence and order to things. So we can start training kids with those types of things by being consistent, by introducing order when they're in their first few months of life. We can also introduce training spatial skills. So spatial skills have to do with where do things go, and can I find things when I'm looking for them. And the reason we put those black and white or red and white mobiles over a child's bed is because they don't have a sense of contrast yet. And we're developing that sense of contrast by them looking at those things. So there's things that we can do consistently to build their sequencing skills and spatial skills, even in infancy.
How did this all start for you? What became the fascination? Where did the journey come? How did you want to become a doctor? Take me back to the beginning.
Oh, golly. Well, it's a process. And in hindsight, everything makes so much more sense than, when you're going through it and you don't know what you want to do, really. But looking back, it totally makes sense. So I was a kid who did okay at school, but if you look at my report cards, the first semester of middle school, I got a 2.5 GPA. And then I ended up with mostly A's and B's by the time I was in 8th grade. And then I got a 2.5 GPA my first semester of high school, and a 2.5 GPA my first semester of college. But, I'd always end up kind of as an honor student or A's because I'd need to adjust and figure things out. When I went to medical school, it was hard. I struggled. I was barely keeping up. And I'd fail a class, and I'd work to make it up, and I'd while I was making that one up, I'd fail another class. And I figured out in that process that I have a learning disability. And my learning disability has everything to do with what the first 2 years of medical school is: memorization of names and facts. I'm just not good at that. I can tell you all about something. I can understand it. So through a process, I went and told one of the deans that I think what I need to do is I need to be seeing real patients. So we would have a class on cardiology, and all my friends would go to the library to study, and I would go to a cardiologist's office after class, and I would follow them around for 4 hours, and then I'd go to the library and study. But once I started doing that, everything clicked. It all made sense because I could learn the stuff in the context of a real patient, and I had a place in my brain to then hang the factual semantic information. So that was a process. That's not necessarily why I went into this, but I went into pediatrics because I like to play with kids, and when you're in pediatrics, you decide, do you want to do something do you want to do a specialty? And I looked at different specialties, and I considered adolescent medicine. I considered child behavior and development. I ended up going into child behavior and development, and once I got there, it was a home run, and it helped me understand how my brain works, and I get to help other people understand how their brain works. It's been
I love that.
perfect path.
I'm fascinated that you figured out that this is how you better learn. How did you figure that out? Because I think that for many, they might just be stuck. Like, I don't know where to go from here. And yet you not only figured it out, but then you advocated for yourself to the dean of, this is what I need in order to succeed. And then they worked with you. And I think that's pretty amazing in and of itself.
Along the way, it was torture. But looking back, even when I was in middle school, what I learned is I had to cram for tests. If I didn't just hyper memorize something the day and a half before a test, it just wouldn't show up. When I was in college, what I used to do is I used to just memorize all my notes, and then I would reduce them, but I'd memorize them. And then when the test came, I would turn over the test and I would write down all my notes on the thing. And then it was like I was taking an open book test because I had everything written down there. Because I understand the stuff. I just need the names and the dates and the titles and those kind of things. That's what I needed to do to kind of get by. But once I started looking into this in medical school, I realized that there was a name for this, and there was a reason, and all of the strategies that I come up with in life were really there, and they made sense.
It's fascinating, and I love it. I'm that's amazing that you did this on your own, and way to go. Congratulations on that, because yes.
So here's the great thing though, is we can do this with pen and paper and a kid in the office when they're 8 or when they're 12. We can help them figure out how their brain works and how they learn, and save them a little bit of if they'll listen, save them a little bit of the struggle that you go on along the way.
And how do we do that? I know that as a parent, my kids are 8 and 9, so they come home with their homework, and it's been years now that we're in elementary school, and I can see right away the differences between the two. And I know that my daughter works best one way. I know that my son, we look at like spelling tests, weekly spelling tests, and he goes, well, it says I don't have to practice them. But yet when you don't practice them, then you fail the test on Friday. And so we've implemented, no, you're going to practice every night. And even he sees, oh, if I practice every night, then I get it by Friday and I'm fine on my test. And it recognizing, which way works best for you, and talking to the teachers. And, we've started a new school year. So we just had parent teacher conferences, and I told my son's teacher, I said, first of all, he advocated for himself and asked you for extra worksheets, which is a big step. But I was the one who asked him to go do that, because he knows that if we don't practice extra, he will not succeed. So if he asks you for more, we need more. Send that home. But we've recognized that this is how you learn best. And he sees it too, because we've practiced. So how do parents make sure that they do that? Because I do feel it's very important. And yet I also know that parents are working nonstop, and to sit down and do homework. Sometimes you get home and the homework's already done. So how do you know?
So Michelle, the first thing that you pointed out was that your son and daughter are different. And that's important because every child is different. They all need something, even in a family where they come from the same, genetics. Kids are all different. I've got five, and each one of them has a different way of thinking and different interests. So that's the first thing, to just recognize that. The second thing is you experiment, and that the experimentation is led by you when they're little, and as they get older, you ask them to solve the problems. You say, "Hey, I notice that we're late for school every day. What do you think we should do differently in order to get ready?" "All right, let's try it. We'll test it for a week, see if it works." "Hey, that didn't work. Let's come up with a new theory." Because that process of just learning how to solve their own problems is really important, because you're not always going to be there for them. So your job is to make observations and to point things out. And, by the time they're in middle school, at least, they can be solving a lot of these problems. They may not be great at it, but with practice, they'll get better.
I love that. And it teaches them the independence too, that we need to. I'm reading The Parent Compass right now, and the
Mm-hmm.
helicopter parents and the tiger parents and the ones who are pushing so much, in college and high school and as they get older, which is why I'm so excited that my fourth grader actually advocated for himself and was doing that on his own, because I don't want to be that helicopter parent who's like, hello, teacher, we need more.
Right. Well, one of the things I talk about in the book is that, by the time a child is in second or third grade, they can make their own lunches. We don't
Hmm.
really think about that, but there's no reason why they can't. You have a shelf with healthy foods on there, and they can go pick it out. But what that does is it makes them think about, what am I going to want later? It's exercising their planning skills at these young ages. They can pack for themselves when they're in third, fourth grade. Maybe give them a list, or, what we used to do, actually, we would scaffold that task. When my kids were in first grade, I would give them a list and I'd write the number of each item that they needed. When they got a little older, I would give them a list of everything that they could take to skiing or to the beach, and they would have to write the numbers that they thought they needed of each item, and they'd show it to me. I'd say, yes, okay, go pack. And then when they got middle school age, I would just give them that list with no numbers or no anything, but just as a reminder, and tell them to pack. And by the time they were in high school, they didn't need a list. We give them that independence and make them think ahead. And if you don't practice that, then you get college students who get a D and they don't know how to solve that problem. And then next thing, mom is showing up and knocking on the dean's door, and the dean doesn't want to talk to mom. It's tricky. I even had one situation where a client who got into UC Davis, so bright kid,
Hmm.
he wasn't, his parents found out like 3 months into the year, as he wasn't making it to class. He had F's and everything. And so their solution for the next semester was, he would take classes on Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. Dad would leave San Jose and drive 2 hours to Davis to wake him up in the morning on Tuesday. And then he would stay in Davis in the dorm room between the two roommates on the floor Tuesday night and Wednesday night to wake his child up to make sure he got to school. And then he would
Oh
drive
my
back
God.
home. And I mean, that's as tigery as you can get, right?
Oh my
And
goodness.
and not realizing that the problem is, we never taught this child to be independent and to speak up for himself. If he got a bad grade, mom would ask the teacher for a retake, would do everything for him, as opposed to letting him learn how to advocate for himself.
That seems like that it's obviously such an extreme, and yet it happened, as you're saying. And it's baffling, because then you wonder, obviously we know what the parents didn't do right with the kid, but then as parents, where do you stop?
They were well intentioned. Their goal was to help their child be successful at school. Um, but yeah, your goal when you're parenting is, it's 18 years of letting go. It's from the time that they need you, and you're doing everything to eventually, okay, give it a try. Good luck. You can do it. And so you have to map out that trajectory, depending on the child, because every child's a little different. But you have to map out that trajectory, that by the time they get there, I can't be holding their hand and driving them to soccer practice.
Yeah. Uh, I'm baffled because I can't imagine. And the poor other roommate with this
That blows me
dad.
away, right?
I mean, what about his parents? Because I'd be on the phone going, "Hey, mom, dad,
Yeah.
the guy's dad is sleeping on our floor 3 nights a week."
Andy snores, right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's absolutely crazy.
Yeah. But it
And I
happens.
think that, we have to implement, chores. And my husband and I, we always go back and forth that we don't think the kids have enough chores. Uh, and to a certain extent, they don't. And yet we're constantly like, I know that they have more quote unquote chores than, friends do. But even something as simple as help with the laundry. And I'm not saying put the detergent in the machine because I don't trust you with that. It's too heavy of a gallon. But to be able to take it from the washing machine to the dryer and click on the buttons, take it out of the dryer, put it back in the hamper, move it to whatever room it needs to go to. Those are simple things that they can do.
And there's research that says that kids who do chores at a young age are less anxious as they get older. They just feel more confident that they can handle things in different situations.
Oh, that's interesting. So what else can we have them do? I'm like, give me my workers. What else can I have these little people do that's going to help them benefit, in the long run? Because I do want to raise independent human beings who can think for themselves, not be anxious, and that I don't have to babysit. I tell them all the time, I don't want to babysit you. That's not my job.
Mhm. Let me take a step back. I would say that um, areas to focus on are their health, brushing their teeth, going to sleep on time, their hygiene, managing their homework. So the more independent they can be with their homework, that they don't need you to check up on it all the time. Um, their health, their hygiene, their homework, their household chores, and to be social. Those are the five most important areas. Now, if you're looking specifically at household chores, well, then it really depends on the developmental abilities of your child. Like I said, when kids are in second grade, gosh, they could be getting themselves dressed and picking out their clothes and making their own breakfast and packing their lunch. Those are all things that they can do that would help out the family because they're
Hmm.
managing their stuff and it's just one less thing that we have to manage for them. They can be cleaning up after themselves. They can clean their rooms certainly by the third, fourth, fifth grade. Um, they can, but they but in order to get to that point, there's steps towards independence. So let's think about just homework. When your child's in kindergarten, they bring home a packet, or first grade, they bring home a packet for the week. You look at it, you help them do what they're going to do on Monday and Tuesday or whatever. You sign the packet, they hand deliver it to the teacher who checks it in. And if anything's missing, they contact you. By the time a child's in second or third grade, maybe they get their packet, but you don't have to look at it. You're just kind of there to help out a little bit if you need some help. And by their time in middle school, you don't need to check their grades more than every couple of weeks. The teacher will reach out to you if there's a problem. In middle school, maybe you help with long-term assignments and planning, but you don't jump in and do that much anymore. Get involved. You're not looking at their grades online unless there's a problem. When they're in high school, you become a consultant. Listen, I'm here if you need me. So it's this gradual stepping back and giving independence, and you can do that with everything, with cleaning your room, with homework, with brushing your teeth, where they just get to be more and more independent. But you have to actively take yourself out of the equation, and it's better to do it in stages as opposed to just saying, "Okay, you're on your own. Good luck."
Hmm. What do you think, as you're mentioning high school and, being the consultant, this new thing of like, oh, we're going to hire someone to do your college essay, and that there's all of these like extras that they certainly didn't exist, or maybe they existed when I was going into college, but I didn't know about them, nor would we have ever afforded to hire someone to write my essay to get into college. But that seems like that's exactly the opposite of what you're trying to do and educate people to do.
Well, first of all, it's totally unacceptable to have somebody else write your personal statement because it's your personal statement. That's not okay. There are people who have somebody edit it and say, you know what, I don't think that's really your voice, or I don't think that encapsulates who you are. We never did that for our kids. We never hired somebody. I mean, they ran their essays by us, and they used us as a consultant. What do you think about this? And we'd help them out. Um, the Yeah, where that gets you is it gets you into a college that you aren't necessarily ready for, and it sets you up for struggle. Kids need to go to the right college, and it's not necessarily the highest ranked college. Um, it's the college that's the right fit for them, and so I want them to go to the process through the process and get into where they're ready to go, and you can be there to help them out. And if your child is mature enough to accept your help, that would be great. And some kids aren't, and then they'll struggle a little bit, and they'll learn that when they're 18 or 19 that it's good to accept help.
I love this.
But it's so
I feel
hard. It's so
you're right.
hard to step back and watch your child kind of failing, knowing it's not working. But in the long run, it pays off. You got to be patient.
Yeah, I do feel like with your, I want to call them the H's, that the hygiene, that the household, all of that.
Oh,
I
fine.
feel like I'm not doing too bad.
Good. But I
I'm
tell you
like,
why
this is good.
those are important. So I bring that up when that comes up the most in my office is when parents are saying, how much time should my child have on electronics?
Mm,
And I say, you know what? If you try to argue with your child about how much electronics they should have, they'll never listen to you. Where I think you can have a success arguing with your child is, listen, it's reasonable for me to expect you to take care of your health, your hygiene, your homework, your household chores, and be social. These are the need tos in life. If you're doing the need tos, I'm not so concerned about the want tos. The reason parents come to me is because they're not doing their homework and they're spending a lot of time on electronics, or they're not going to sleep on time and they're spending a lot of time on electronics. So what I say is, let's make it about sleep. Let's make it um, about eating healthy. And if you're doing these things, parents aren't going to be very concerned about your electronics time because you've shown that you can do the need tos in life before the want tos. You know how to prioritize.
I love that. I love the way you put that, the need tos versus the want tos, because it's relatable for kids and adults. And it makes so much sense. I mean, we have rules around not necessarily time limits, but after 6 p.m., it goes off because I know it's going to affect how you fall asleep. But that
But
doesn't mean
but
that
you
you can't
can't have
watch
those
TV.
you can't have those rules when they're 17 because
Right.
in a year they're going to be going to college and you'll have no access. And if they haven't learned to regulate themselves, it's not going to work in college.
Yeah.
I'll tell you
We
one
also
more
don't do
thing.
it first thing in the morning either.
Right. They have to learn to do that. Right. And when they're 5 and 6 and 7 and 8, those rules make a lot of sense because you're teaching what we prioritize in life and what's important to our family. I'll
Hmm.
take it one step further though. So all of those things, taking care of your health, your hygiene, your homework, your household chores, those all take forward thinking. They it, Doing your homework doesn't help you today. It might help you get into college someday. Uh, Brushing your teeth doesn't really isn't a big deal, but you'd hate to get cavities later, or you'd hate for that girl at high school to say, "Oh, your breath stinks." Those putting on deodorant, same thing. You don't put
Hmm.
deodorant on because you smell yourself. You put deodorant on because you realize that somebody else might smell you. And so that shows when kids are at that level where they're doing that, we should be celebrating them for putting on deodorant because it shows
Yes.
that they've taken a leap in their forward thinking, their ability to think ahead and plan. Because all those things take planning. They don't make sense in the moment.
I love this. I'm so proud of my kids right now too.
Good.
They'll
this,
be able to tell your dad at their next appointment, your son says we're doing good.
this interview wouldn't go well if your face was dropping the whole time and you were.
And yet you never know, right? Could have been the other way.
Never know. It's a risk I take.
Where can everyone find you, buy the book, learn more, and start raising some organized kids?
Well, the book is available everywhere. Raising an Organized Child's available at any local bookstore. They can get it, or on any of the online Amazons or whoever sells them. That book is available. It was published through the American Academy of Pediatrics, and so it's endorsed and supported by them. Um, I also have a tool called organizedstudents.com. It's a website, www.organizedstudents.com, where high school and middle school students, we have an online autonomous training program that kids can do to learn real organizational skills. The book targets parents and how you teach your kids, but the website targets students and helps them learn some skills.
I love that. Thank you so much for coming on. I've really enjoyed getting to talk to you and Now I can't wait for my next dentist appointment with your dad. We're going to talk about you.
I don't know how many people say that. That's great.
I don't know about you, but I am always more than happy to get any kind of help, tips, tactics, tools when it comes to my kids, because there is no handbook. So I loved this conversation with Dr. Korb. I hope you did too. And what else can we hope for but to raise really great kids who are happy, healthy, and who eventually can fly the nest, because they eventually all will. If you have any tips or tools, please share them. A wealth of knowledge is always appreciated. So go grab a copy of Raising an Organized Child and let me know what you get from it.